In this video, we'll dive into the concept of simple loops, explaining their importance and practical use cases. Whether you're new to programming or just brushing up, this tutorial will help you understand what a loop is, how to use for loops and while loops in Python, and real-world examples for better clarity.
Hello everyone. In this session, we are going to discuss about how to create a simple calculator in Python using loops concept. So before we start coding, let us have a brief discussion on loops in Python. So first, let's start with the introduction of loops. In Python, loops are very essential programming constructs used for repeating a block of code multiple number of times. As the word loops indicates that nothing but the block of code keeps repeating multiple number of times. As they are particularly useful to perform same operation on different piece of data set when you want to execute a specific set of instructions until a certain condition is met. If the condition is given, okay, if the condition given is to print the numbers up to 10, the condition is that we have to print the numbers up to 10. So by using the loops, whether it may be for loop, while loop, we can print the numbers repeatedly one after the other. So what happens? Loops are the concept where they are being repeated over a block of code multiple number of times so that the condition is met and the output is obtained. Loops are indispensable tools. The meaning is that they are very necessary tools in Python programming because they are offering a powerful means. That is, they are giving us the means to iterate, that is, to traverse over the data. Traverse in the sense travel through the data, check whether the data is present, execute the data repeatedly, and control the program flow. Apart from that, loops are very flexible and they are versatile. This nature of loops makes them used in various programming tasks, that is, maybe a simple data or complex data manipulation. Let's now dive deeper into the significance as well as the mechanism of loops in Python. So what are the significance of loops? The first one is iteration and repetition. The word iteration means iterate, repeat, travel, and repetition is nothing but repeat one after the other. At their core, loops facilitate iteration. That is nothing but it travels, allowing a block of code to be executed repeatedly. So it travels to the loop, it travels to the objects or the elements which are present in the loop or the block of code and repeatedly executes that in order to meet the condition. This repetition is invaluable when dealing with collection of data, such as lists, tuple, or strings, as it enables the same operation to be applied to each element efficiently. So what happens when you apply loop concept for collection of data, such as lists? It may be a list of fruits, it may be a list of animals, it may be that, okay, strings in a array, that is, string is nothing but sequence of characters. Lists are nothing but linked list. It may be a list of fruits, like it may consist of mango, apple, banana, orange, grapes. So all these lists, on these kind of lists, on this kind of sequence of characters, we can apply loops concept and get them repeatedly used, check the block of code, and execute it. The next one coming into picture is handling diverse data. The word diverse means different data. Loops excel at processing different data sets by accommodating or adjusting different types of data structures. Okay, so it can accommodate, it is used in processing different kind of data structures. What is a data structure? Data structure is nothing but structural arrangement of data in a proper manner. Like it may be like, so it, data structure examples can be linear data structure, non-linear data structure, etc. So if we talk about data structure, that is stack, queue, linked list, all these are data structures which are being used. So in that case, iterating to those data structure, for loops can be used. Whether iterating over a list of numbers, whether it can be character of a string or key value pair. What is this key value pair? Now, if we talk about objects, object is nothing but it is a standalone entity. Now, in objects, we, in terms of, if you want to talk about Python or it may be JavaScript languages, we store object in the form of key value pair. Now, what is this key value pair? If I want to store the details of a student, so now when I store the details of the student, what can be the details of the student? It can be the roll number of the student, then the name of the student, the address of the student, so all his credentials. So now the roll number becomes the key and 21, roll number 21. So the 21 becomes the value. So to iterate through that key value pairs, we can use loops concept here. Loops provide a unified mechanism for traversing. That is, it provides a proper mechanism to travel as well as calculate or manipulate the data elements. The next part coming into picture is enhanced productivity. By automating repetitive tasks, loops contribute to enhance productivity and code efficiency. So what happens? Continuously using, continuously repeating the task, loops, what they do, they increase, enhances, that they but increase the productivity and the efficiency of code increases. Instead of writing identical code for each data element, a loop allows developers for encapsulate the common logic with a single block, reducing redundancy and streamlining the development process. So the meaning is that for if I want to print the numbers in Python 1 to 10, rather I write print 1, print 2. So what happens? My code length increases. Rather, if I use loops concept, what is going to happen? I have to put the condition that print me numbers up to 10. So based on that looping concept, the condition will be read, and based on that iterative process, one after the other, the process takes place and you will get the desired output. So what happens? It increases the code efficiency, the length of the code reduces. So that is the reason loops are used. The next topic talking about is dynamic control flow. Loops offer dynamic control flow. That is, it enables executing the specific instructions based on conditions or data characteristics. So whatever condition is given, based on that, the loops iterate themselves, and based on that, repeatedly they iterate and give the desired output. So what happened? Their flow is very dynamic. That is, they flow in a proper way and then get the desired output. They are very flexible. That is, it it empowers the developers to implement complex decision-making processes and adapt code behavior dynamically run during runtime. So what happened? This condition and this behavior of loops make the developers to make use of the loops in complex manipulations or in complex decision-making processes, so that iteration code flow becomes easier and the desired result is obtained. The next significant coming into picture is iterating with for loop. Python's for loop is a versatile construct for iterating over collections or sequence of data. Whether the data may be in the form of collection of, that is nothing but it may be collection of fruits, collection of animals, collection of grocery elements, grocery products, or sequence of data. The data can be printing the numbers, printing the anything. It iterates. So what this loop does, it is a very versatile, that is, it's a very flexible loop which iterates, which tries to repeatedly iterate through each atom in a specified sequence, executing the enclosed block of code for each iteration. So what happens if I want to iterate, if I want to print first 10 natural numbers from 1 to 10, so what happens? I'm going to use the for loop. So in for loop, we have three conditions. One is for loop initializing, for loop incrementation, and for loop declaration. So what happens in this particular for loop? We are trying to initialize the value for printing the numbers. That is for I equal to 0, I less than 10, that is number. We are putting the condition there that we have to print numbers less than 10. And we want to print iterate, incrementing operator I plus plus. So first it keeps on checking the condition, and in the given block of code, we print the statement. So based on the condition, it will iterate through the loop 10 times and it will print me the first 10 natural numbers. So what happens? It facilitates seamlessly without any obstacle, without any barrier. For loops iterate continuously, meets the above condition, and gives the desired output. The next coming into picture is iterating with while loop. While loops provide a mechanism for executing a block of code repeatedly as a specific condition remains true. So what is this while loop? Unless and until the condition turns out to be true, the loop repeat. So in for loop, we will be knowing the specified time limit and we'll be knowing the condition before in hand. And based on that, it will stop. But that's why we say for loop is a finite loop wherein it will iterate finite number of times. And once the condition is met, it will stop. Whereas in while loop, it is an infinite loop. We will not be knowing to what time the loop will iterate. So it will iterate unless the condition is met, and then it will terminate. So it will say this type of loop is particularly useful when number of iterations is not predefined. We don't know how many number of times the loop has to repeat. So in that case, until and unless the condition is met, we use while loop. So that can be the major difference. If I can tell you what could be the major difference between for loop and while loop is that for loop is a finite loop. While loop is an infinite loop. Because in for loop, the condition is predetermined. Whereas in while loop, the condition is not predetermined. It is unknown. Whereas in for loop, the condition is known. So what happens in for loop? The condition is known. So up to that many number of times, the loop will repeat and it will execute and give you the output. Whereas in while loop, the condition is given, but we don't know how many number of time the loop has to repeat. So the loop keeps repeating, and once the condition is met, it will stop. The next significance coming into picture is handling loop control statements. This is very important. Python offers several loop control statements to modify the default behavior of loops. Okay, if there is any default behavior of the loops, to modify that, we can use this loop control statements. Which are the loop control statements? That is, the first one is the break statement. Terminates the loop prematurely by passing subsequent iterations. Now, if you want, now for example, if you talk about a switch statement, as we have n number of conditional statements like if statement, else statement, if else if statement, if else if ladder. Apart from this, we have one more important statement coming to picture is switch statement. In switch statement, what happens is that if a particular condition is, if a given block of code meets the condition, only that block of code will execute. To stop the execution, we use the break keyword, or we can say the loop control statement, that is break. So what happened? It automatically, when the condition is met, it will break the loop and it will come out of the loop. So that time we use the break statement. Okay, so in terms of switch cases, we can use the break statement. So what it does, it terminates the loop permanently. Whenever the condition is met, it will terminate, it will break the loop and it will come out. The cursor will come out and execute. In case, if the particular condition is not getting met, Then what happens in switch statement? It will verify each case, case 1, case 2, case 3, case 4, case 5, and then it directly come out to the default case where it say the condition not met and the loop will break. So in that cases, we use the break statement. The next statement coming into picture is the continue statement. In the continue statement, it skips the current iteration and proceeds to the next iteration. So what happened? It will check the first block of code. If it feels that the current iteration is not going to meet the condition, it will continue the next iteration. And based on the conditions, it will iterate a number of times. And once the condition is met, it will stop. The next part coming into picture is pass. Serves as a placeholder, allowing an empty block of code to be syntactically valid. That is nothing but it acts as a placeholder. It holds the values of allowing an empty block. So if there is a block where no printing statements, no return value, nothing is passed. So in that case, what happens? This pass statement acts as a placeholder and tries to iterate and tries to give the output. So this was all about handling loop control statements. The next one is error handling and exceptional handling. Loops can be coupled with error handling mechanism such as try except blocks to gracefully handle error encountered during the iterations. These ensure robustness and reliability in the face of an unexpected conditions. So we can use error handling and exceptional handling techniques. So in case if there what happened? What is an error? Error is nothing but errors are generated by the users. Bug is generated by the compiler. So what happens? So errors are generated by user. Now, for example, when I'm coding any statement or when I'm coding, if I want to terminate the code, I have to put a semicolon after the print statement. So if I have missed that statement, what happens? This is error created by the user. Actually, the compiler will read each line of code and it will execute. But what error the user has done? It has not placed a semicolon. So what happened? That is called as error. So user has created the error and that error will be shown in your console. So error handling and exceptional handling can also be done by using loop statements. That is by try and catch method. Try method is nothing but it is used to execute and catch method is used to generate the errors. Now, there are certain key concepts to be discussed in loops. What are the key concepts in loops? That is, first, loop initialization. Initialize is nothing but to start before starting any program. Now, for example, if I say int a, int a is nothing but I'm initializing a. Initializing means I'm giving a name to my a variable. A is a variable. What is a variable? Variable is a container to store the value. Int a indicates that whatever value I'm going to store in A, it's going to be a data type integer. So that is called as initialization. If I say int A equal to 10, that means it is called initializing and I'm declaring the value of A as 10. So in loops also, initializing is very important. If I talk about a for loop, I want to put a condition saying that. So the first statement start with loop initializing. How I will initialize the loop? At I equal to 0. So that is my int I equal to 0. So that int is my data type, I is my variable, and I'm equating and I'm declaring I equal to 0. So that is called as loop initializing. The next condition coming into picture, next concept coming into picture is the condition. What condition I'm going to put? So in order to print my first 10 natural numbers. So specifying the condition that determines whether the loop should continue or terminate. So now, if I want to print my first 10 numbers, so what I'm going to do, int I equal to 0, I less than equal to 10. So I want to print numbers up to 10. So I'm going to use the condition less than equal to. What is this less than equal to? It's an operator. So now that is my condition. Next coming into picture is iteration. How many number of times I want to iterate my loop? That is I plus plus. So that increment operator or incrementation I'm applying. So incrementing or updating the loop variables to process through the loop. How many times I wanted to process? 10 times, 20 times. So these three are mandatory. And then the last one is termination. Ending the loop when the specified condition is no longer true. Okay, if you want to end the loop by termination, you can end the loop. So these are the few key concepts of loops. That is initialization, condition, iteration, and termination. The next concept coming into picture is advantages of loops. What are the advantages of loops? The first one is simplify repetitive tasks. So it makes the repetitive task very simple. Increase code readability by avoiding redundancy. That is, readable, the code can be reused and reading of the code becomes easier. Rather, if a user wants to print first 10 numbers, if it if the user continuously writes the first 10 sentence, print 1, print 2, print 3. So what happens? The user gets fed up. So reading of the code becomes boring. So for that reason, to overcome that, what happens? The loops try to read read the code, make the code very small, and also avoid the redundancy. The next one, enable efficient handling of large data sets. Right? If the data set is nothing but where large amount of data is there. Now it may be arrays, it may be objects, whatever it is. If I want to print n number of arrays also, I can use my for loops and get the data as my output. Provide a flexible mechanism for iterating over sequencing of data. So what happened? It provides a flexible mechanism, versatile mechanism where we can iterate through the data sequentially, one after the other. Sequence one after the other. The next part coming into picture are types of loops in Python. The first type is the for loop. Very important loop coming into picture. The for loop. Used for iterating over a sequence such as list, tuple, string, or in range, and execute a block of code for each item in the sequence. So what happened if I want to execute the block of code every time, each item, so that time I'm going to use a for loop. As previously explained, for loop is a finite loop because the condition will be predefined. So what could be the syntax for loop is that for variable I in sequence. So that is variable, whatever I'm going to do, write, and this in sequence. And in that hash part, code block to be executed, I'm going to write my code where variable represents the current item in sequence. That is a container where I can store the item. And sequence refers to the collection of items over which the loop will iterate. The sequence may be for I in range. Okay, for I in range of 10 or for I in range of fruits. So that fruits is nothing but my sequence where it consists. What does the fruit consist? Fruits consist my collection of items. It may be apple, grapes, mango, banana, anything. Okay. So this is all about the for loop. The next coming into picture is the while loop. Executes a block of code repeatedly as long as a specified condition is true. Unless and until the condition turns out false, it will stop. So it will iterate or it will execute only when a specific condition is met. The loop terminates when the condition becomes false. So when the condition becomes false. Now, for example, if I say a given code, while age is greater than equal to 18. So that time, the condition is that you are eligible for voting. If or else, if the condition is not valid, if a person enters the value, okay, if the user enters the value 18, that means it is according to the condition that the user age is 18, so he is eligible for voting. If he enters the age, the user input is 17, then the condition is false. So automatically our while loop will terminate and come out of the loop. So what is the condition? What is the syntax for while loop? While the condition, code block to be executed. So you're going to put the condition while age is greater than equal to 18 and you're going to put the sentence there, print that you are eligible for voting. So this is this syntax example, you can say. Condition specifies the condition that determines whether the loop should continue or terminate. Okay. The condition, whatever condition we are giving, based on the condition, we will come to know whether the loop has to continue or iterate. The next one coming into picture is the nested loops. Nested, as the word say, nested means one A loop inside a loop is called as nested loop. In Python, it is possible to have one loop inside another loop. They are called as nested loop. For loop inside a for loop. Okay, so that is called as nested loop. They can used to iterate through items in multiple dimension, which could be 2D list. Okay, so now if I want for multiple dimensional arrays, 2D arrays, that is multiplication of matrices, 3 into 3 matrices, 3 into 4 matrices, whatever it is, during that time, we can use a nested loop because we'll be having n number of rows, I number of rows, j number of columns. So I and j, to print those values of the matrices, we can use two for loops. So in that case, nested loops will come into picture. Nested loops are commonly used in scenarios where multiple level of iterations are required. So iterations are more than one, such as generating combinations, permutations, multiple dimensional data structure. Multidimensional data structures are those only. Okay. They provide a powerful mechanism for solving various programs and problems by iterating over combinations of data elements efficiently. So what it does, it continuously iterate. Multiple number of time iterations is required. For that time, we use nested loops. Then we talk about using enumerate in loops. So what is this word enumerate? The word enumerate means that we are traversing, we are checking, we are adding, or we are counting the number of elements in the list. Now, for example, if the list contains 1 to 10 numbers, that an enumerate function, it's one of the function in Python. What it does, it goes and count the number of elements present. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So what is the purpose of using enumeration function is that it tries to see, adds a counter to an iterable and returns it in the form of an enumerate object. It is often used in for loop to keep track of the index. So what happened? In a for loop, if I talk about list that is 1 to 10, so each element, they are in the form of an array. So each element in an array is stored in the form of index. So to keep a track, to keep a watch on first index, which element is stored, in the fifth index, which element is stored, like a track, to keep a track, we use enumerate function. Now, for example, it may be schools, it may be banks, it may be offices. We use a CCTV camera. So CCTV camera keeps a track of every minute who has entered into the office, who has left the office, who, what is happening. Each and every minute is noted down. So there, CCTV camera acts as the enumerate function. So in the same way, functions in enumerate function is used in for loop to keep a count or to keep and track of indexes on which index any element is stored. The enumerate function in Python is a versatile tool. That is, it's a very good tool for iterating over an iterable while simultaneously keep a track. But whatever we have explained on the top is the same. That is, it keeps a track on each and every element, on what position the first element is placed, on what position the second element is placed. Based on that, it keeps a track. So the next concept coming into picture is what is looping best? What is the best practice for looping is that to write efficient and readable code. It is important to use meaningful variables. So when we are using any loop, we should write it in a very simple and readable way. And also, we should use meaningful variable names, avoid unnecessary. See, if it's very simple to print first and numbers, rather using nested loops, you can use only for loop to print. If it is necessary, then use the nested loop. If it is a multi-dimensional array, 2D array, or a multiplication of matrices, anything, during that time, we can use nested loop. Rather, we can use simple for loop and make the code efficient and readable. So that understanding the context is key to use loop effectively. The next come the very important concept, that is, where is this loops used? What are the application of loops? The first concept in application is data processing and analysis. So loop are extensively used for processing and analyzing the data stored in collections such as list, tuple, arrays, and dictionaries. They enable the traversal of data elements, allow for operations such as aggregation, filtering, transformation, and statistical analysis. So now, data, what is the word data processing? Is nothing but before analyzing the data, we need to process. Okay, so process is nothing but if a given data set is there, in that data set, I want to filter any value. So I can, which is unnecessary, which is not required. So I can filter that out and that I can analyze my data. So for processing the data as well as analyzing my data, I can use loop effectively. And also, I can use loops also to analyze my data sets or my data stored in the collection. It may be list of fruits, I have already told. It may be tuples, arrays, okay, that is a group of names, that is strings, anything. If I want to process, if I want to analyze in this index, which value is present, in the ninth index, which name is present. So that analyzing can be done by using loop. Because in loops, we store the value in the array. If we talk about array, we store the values in the form of indices. So loops help us to store the values as well as analyze the values. Talking about the next part is iterative algorithms. Many algorithms such as sorting. So if we talk about the data structure consists of most of the sorting techniques, searching techniques, and graph traversal. Sorting is nothing but, okay, sorting techniques may be ascending order sorting, descending order sortings. Searching is nothing but binary search, linear search. Okay, and also in that sorting, we can also have, apart from that, bubble sort, merge sort. All these sorting techniques come in the data structure. So to sort the elements from ascending order to descending order or from smaller to bigger, that time we can use this for loop in order to sort. And for searching technique, also to search the middle number or the whatever, whichever number we want, we can use the searching technique. And graphs and traversal. Graph traversal algorithm. That is nothing but if you want to traverse through trees or graphs, we can use our for loops. The next application coming into picture is user input and interaction. Loops are employed in interactive programs to continue prompt users for input, validate input values, and execute specific actions based on the user response. Now, for example, if I want to get any user input out of it, so what happens? For loop helps to answer those user input, give the values for whatever they have given, whatever input values they have given. Based on that, these loops store those values and execute based on the specific actions which are given by the users. File and resource handling. Loops are also used to iterate over files, directories, database records, and other external resources. They facilitate tasks such as reading from or writing the files. That is, for file handling techniques, we can use loops. Now, what are the concepts of file handling? Is nothing but to read a file, write a file, append a file, open a file, close a file. So all these tasks of file handling can be done using our loops concept. Another application coming into picture are graphics and animation. In graphics programming and game development, loops are used to update the position, orientation, and appearance of object in a scene over a time. So for the development of graphics or for the development of games. Now, for example, if I talk about graphics in Python, if I want to draw any circle, if I want to draw a triangle, if I want to draw a pentagon or hexagon, anything for that graphics purpose, I can have to use the library known as Turtle. I have to import that library. And when I want to draw, if I want to set the orientation of the turtle, I want to set the position of the turtle. To draw the circle, I have to make use of a for loop. So, and for also game development. So for both graphics and animation, I can make use of the loops. Numerical computation, loops are also utilized for calculating purpose, such as in arrays, matrices, and tensors, etc. Matrix multiplication. Okay. vector operations, much more. So talking about the conclusion is that overall loops are versatile constructs that form the backbone of, so loops are backbone for programming because they enable pre-processing, manipulating, stimulation, interaction, and wide range of application. Mastering loop constructs is essential to become a good, proficient, and algorithmic programmer. So now let's start coding in order to generate a simple calculator in Python using loops. So let's code in Rapleet. This is the page. Let's create a new RAPL. Select the template Python as we are going to code in Python itself. Create a title. So before we start to create a simple calculator, let us do the first few programs on for loop. So let's start. So I'm creating a variable named mylist that is equal to 10. My list consists of 10 to 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 10, the multiple of tens. Then I'm going to use to print those numbers. I'm going to use for num is the variable in my list. Colon is required in Python. Print the numbers. So now, so in this particular 3 lines of code, what I have done is I've taken a variable mylist and I have initialized my variables and declared with 10 multiples of 10 numbers. And then for in order to print my numbers in my list, so I'm going to use the for loop. Num is the variable in my list and print the numbers whichever are there in my list. So if I run the code by clicking on the run button, you can see on the right side of my console, my output is being displayed. So in the same way, we will do another small program. Let me comment out the above program. So to comment out in Python, we use hash symbol. So the next one is I'm using another variable, my string equal to, in double quotes, sequence of character, hello world. And I'm going to print each character for char in my string variable. So whichever characters are there in my string variable, I want each character to be printed. If I write print char, so if I click on the run button, I can see each of my character is printed. HELLO, hello world, WORLD. So these are simple programming codes which wherein we are using for loop. Let me comment out it again. And let's do a simple code. I have a variable named fruits, wherein it consists of the list of fruits, that is apple. Since they are sequence of characters, so I'm encoding them into double quotes. Again, I'm enclosing this into double quotes. For fruit in fruits list, for each fruit in the fruit list, print each fruit from the list. Print each fruit. So fruit is also my variable. Okay, so I want each and every fruit to be printed. So can you see your output? Apple, banana, and cherry. So now, this was how I could print my list of my numbers, my sequence of characters. I can print my sequence of list in which each an element is placed, each an element fruit is placed one after the other in sequence. I can print that using for loop. Now, we shall do certain programming using while loop also. Let me comment that out. So now let us do few programs using while loop. Same, I'm going to use a variable mylist equal to hello world. And I'm going to use a variable called as the length equal to length my string. Now I'm going to initialize that I equal to 0 while the condition I'm going to use. While, what is the condition I'm using? I less than length. If the value of I is less than the length, what is the length of the characters here? You have to calculate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It will take the space character also 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So the condition is that it is going to take, if the I is less than length, you have to print that my underscore string is my variable. Since it's array of characters, I'm going to use array in it. And then in order to terminate my loop, I'm going to say I equal to I plus equal to 1. That is, as my condition is satisfied, it will go into the third sentence. So let me explain you the code. So I'm going to declare a variable mylist equal to hello world. Then I'm going to use a length as a variable, and I'm going to use length function to calculate the length of my list. What is the length of my list? What is there in my list? It is hello world. So I want to calculate the length. What is the length of the sequence of characters? So I'm going to initialize I equal to 0. And my condition is that while I is less than length, print my string of I. That is, if I value is 0, print for at the 0th index, what is there? H is there. Similarly, what is there? So that it will come here, it will increment the value of I equal to I plus 1. So first the value of I is 0, 0 plus 1 becomes 1. So now the I value is 1. So at the first index, 0th index H is there, first index E is there. So it will check, yes, 1 is less than the length, yes, correct. Then print the second character. So in the same way, all the characters will be printed. So now if I run the code, okay, yeah, it is my list. Sorry, the variable I have used is list. So that is it's giving me an error because so I just wanted to show you the error also, what would be. So I just changed my variable name. My variable name is my list and I had written my string. So it's an creating. This is nothing but error created by the user. So my variable name is not matching. So it's giving me an error saying that my string is not defined. So I'm going to rechange my list name. Yes, it's my list, LIST. Yeah. Rerun the code. It says length equal to length my string. Here also, I've used the same variable. So let me change my list as my variables was not matching. Now rerun the code. If I run the code, you could see hello world. So in the previous program, in this program, I also wanted to show you what could be the error if these are error which are created by the user. So I purposely changed the name of my variable. So if my actual variable is my list and I wrote the variable as my string. So my actual variable and my created variable was different. For that reason, it was saying my string was not defined. So this is how we can create an error by ourselves by using loops. So this was a simple program for while loop. We can have another program. Now, for example, I equal to 1 while I is less than equal to 5, print the value of I, and then I'm going to increment the value of I, saying that I plus equal to 1. Okay, so let me comment out this. Why I'm commenting out, because if I run the code, the previous code also will run and the code which I have written now, both the codes will run. So now, so I want to print the first numbers I less than equal to 5. That is up to 5 numbers I want to print. So I'm going to initialize the first number as I. This is called as initialization. This is called as condition. And this is the increment operator. So this is the way how we define a loop. Okay, you can see it's printing the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So in this way, we can print the list. We can add one by one each element in the list. That also can be done by using for loop and while loop. Now, let us create a simple calculator using while loop. So now I will create a new RAPL again. In order to create a new RAPL, click on these blocks on the left side, create, click on the create button, select the template Python, and then write as the name of the folder as calculator using loop. Create a new RAPL. So now let's start to create a simple calculator for addition, multiplication, subtraction, and division. So now let's start creating it. So now in order to add two numbers, I'm going to create a function add. So what a function? Function is nothing but a block of code where you can execute. Okay. it divides the lengthy code into block. Okay, block of executable code, you can say, right? So I'm going to define add x comma y. Okay, so this is nothing but define is the name of the, this is function. Function name is add, and whatever in the brackets that is there, those are called as parameters. And then I'm going to return x plus y. Okay, so what I did, I define a function named add in the bracket x comma y are my two parameters, and I'm returning the addition of those two by using the return keyword. In the same way, I'm going to define another function, subtract. I'm going to use the same variable x comma y. These two are called as parameters. The variables which are there inside the parentheses are called as parameters. And I'm going to return x minus y. In the same way, I am going to define another function, multiply. In the bracket, x comma y, same two parameters, and I'm going to return x star y. Again, I'm going to define a function divide. In the parentheses, those same parameters, and return x divided by y. So now what we have done, we have defined the function add, subtract, multiply. We have used the two parameters x comma y, which are enclosed within the parenthesis. And then we are returning what we want. Returning, that is adding adding x plus y, returning x minus y, returning x into y, and returning x divided by y. So now in x divided by y, if the user enters, so I'm going to use your if statement saying that if y equal to 0. So if the user enters the second number equal to 0, what you could return? Return double quotes, error, that is division by 0. So it will be an error. Suppose if I'm the user and I'm giving here, I'm going to use user inputs also. With the user, as I'm a user, I'm going to enter my first number 5 and second number 0. So 5 divided by 0 is not defined. So I'm just putting a condition saying that if the user enters y equal to 0, it's going to be error saying that division by 0 is possible. Else, return x divided by y. Okay, so we have defined 4 functions: add, subtract, multiply, divide. This is where we have defined the function. This is called as function definition. Now we are going to call the function to. First, let us print certain statements saying that as we are going to do all the 4 operations, we are going to ask the user to select which operation it wants. Print. So the first statement says to select, we are asking the user to select the operator, whether it is going to be addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division. The next one is we are printing first addition. When we are printing second equal to subtraction. Third equal to multiplication. Fourth one, print. So as the user selects the operator, if he selects any operator, based on that, it is going to do the operation, whether it is going to be a division operation, whether it is going to be a multiplication operation, anything. Then, after this, we are going to use the while loop in order to place the condition. While true, if the condition is true. So what does the while loop says? If the condition is true, you have to run. You have to make sure that you get the output. If the condition is false, it will come out of the loop. So now we are going to place the condition saying that choice equal to input enter enter choice. That is either you select 1, 2, 3, 4, whichever you want, you select 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. Close the parenthesis. So what we are asking the user to select his or her own choice, whether you want to do addition in the calculator, whether you want to do multiplication in the calculator, anything. So now, we are going to put if condition. If choice, now once the, assuming once the user is choosing any of the 4 options, if the choice in single inverted quotes, you put the character 1, comma, 2, single quotes, comma, single quotes, 3, single quotes, 4, then if the choice is either of the one, print. What you want to print? Whenever the operation is done, you have to store that answer into the result. Saying result, comma, add num1, comma, num2. Add num1, comma, num2. Before it chooses, so let's first declare the variables. If num choice, okay, if the user chooses any one of the operation, let's declare that num1 equal to float. Okay, we are declaring that those numbers, the user should input a floating point number. Input enter first number. Same way, we are going to declare the second number to be a floating point number. Enter second number. Okay. And inside the if, we are going to use again an if that is called as nested if. If, again a condition, if the choice is equal to 1, then print the statement saying print whatever operation it has done to store it in the form of a result. Add num1, num2. Similar way, elif elif choice is equal to 2, the operator selected by the user is second, that is subtraction. Then say print result equal to, comma, use the function name. This is nothing but function call subtract num1, num2. Make sure that whatever function name you've given, it is the same. Whatever uppercase, lowercase, alphabet, whatever you've given, make sure it is the same. Then elif else if choice is equal to 3, print the result, comma, multiply num1, comma, num2. Comma, num2. Make sure that whatever function you're given, the same function you're calling here. Then we have elif the choice is equal to the proper indentation 4, print result equal to, comma, make sure the function call divide num1, comma, num2. If no condition, then just use the break statement. This is all nested loop, nested if loop. Else print else print invalid input. Apart from these four, If the user enters any other operating symbol, it will print invalid input. So before running the program, let me explain you once more. To build a simple calculator, we are defining four different functions, that is add, subtract, multiply, and divide. In the add function, within the parentheses, we are using two parameters x, y, and we are returning the addition of those two variables. In the second sentence, we are using defined function for subtract, wherein we are passing the two parameters x, y, and returning the subtraction of x, y. Then we are defining the function multiply, which will pass the two variables similar way x, y, and it will return the multiplication of it. Then we have defined divide, x, y are the parameters. In case the user enters y as equal to 0, then we cannot divide any parameter, any number with 0, because it is not possible. That is, error division by 0 is not possible. Else, return x, y. Now we have to print the operation, selection operation, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Now we are going to put a condition that input choices out of the four, any one the user has to choose. Then after that, after the choice, the user has to input the numbers. That is floating. As we use the data type as float, you can use the floating point numbers. If you use int, it will give you integer as output. And if the choice is equal to 1, the result will be, it will add the two numbers. If the user chooses 1, so it will operate for addition. If the user chooses 2, it will operate for subtraction. If the user chooses 3, it will operate for multiplication. If the user uses 4, it will operate for division. If the user, apart from the four choices, if chooses any other, it will break out the condition using break statement, and it will print the invalid output. So let us run the code. So it is giving me at line 24, yeah, expected indent. That is, we have to give the indent here. Then now, rerun the code. So now, as you see, selection operation, addition, subtraction, out of these four, you have to select. It is asking the user to enter his choice. If my choice is 2, I will press enter. It will ask me to enter the first number. So if I enter the first number as 5, and if I enter the second number as 3, since I have choose the second operation, so it should perform the subtraction. That is 5 minus, can you see the result here? 5 minus 3 is 2. 2.0. Why it is giving me a floating decimal point number? Because I have used the data type as floating point number. In a similar way, we can rerun the code and check for all. As we have checked for subtraction, now let us check for addition. I have choose the first operator. So I'm going to enter my numbers as 10 and second number as 5. And when I click on enter, it will give me the result 15. Similar way, if I run the code for my third choice, I'm going to show you all the operations. And I'm going to ask you to enter the first number is 5, second number is 4. So the output is 5 4s are 20. I'm going to rerun the code again. And I'm going to choose the fourth choice. And I'm going to input the first number as 10 and the second number as 2. And it will give me the output 10 divided by 2 is 5. Now, let us check for the fourth one itself with entering the first number as 5, 10, and second number as 0. So division of 10, saying that error. The result is error. Division by 0 is not possible. If I rerun the code, and apart from the choice, if I run fifth, I choose the fifth choice, which is not there. So it will say invalid input. That is, it is going to break the if statement, if condition, the if block, and directly it is going to come to the else block saying print invalid. So this is the way, using loop concept, using conditional concept, and using the functions, how to create a simple calculator. So we have used while loop here. Thank you.